Do you remember the first time someone you know shared about their mental health challenges? I will never forget the first time I shared mine. I remember it like it was yesterday. Well, I looked up my journals to make sure I had the history down. And so it happened 10 years ago on November 20th, 2012. I get an email from a reporter of the OC Register. That's the local newspaper here in Orange County, California. And he found my personal website at djchuang.com. It's just named after me. And he found it intriguing because I had a lot of ideas. And I think he also noticed that a small portion of my website mentioned bipolar disorder. And so he gave me a call. We scheduled an interview. And he talked with me for nearly 2 hours, capturing my story, hearing about my church consulting work in working with Asian American and multi ethnic churches and online churches, mostly advisory and volunteering, but I love doing that. And we also followed up, handed him some leads to talk about next generation Asian American churches. And that article published in January of 2013. Some people I knew saw the article and they would say, "Hey, I saw the article," but they wouldn't know what to say because in that article, not only did it talk about my work as a church consultant and the various content of my website, but it also mentioned that I have bipolar disorder. I have bipolar disorder. I was diagnosed in 2001. So I've been managing my self care and mental health with medication and talk therapy and seeing a psychiatrist, psychologist, making some adjustments in my lifestyle, adding exercises, eating things I enjoy, but not a stringent diet. And certainly the church and my small group has been a vital part in helping me to not only cope, but to have support, to know that I'm not alone. And because I have these mood swings, it would kind of prompt some intellectual restlessness in part. And since that time, 2013, I've even had a personal crisis and an episode where I had to go to the hospital for 3 days because I was apparently acting strangely. And that was in 2017. And even in 2013, I had realized that I did not get diagnosed because I had been resisting going to a counselor and getting diagnosed because I was high functioning. I could hold down a job, and being Chinese American, grew up in a traditional Chinese cultural church, I frankly was ashamed to get help. So I waited till age 34 when the bottom fell out and I had to get help. As the summer of 2022 is dawning to an end, a friend prompted me, actually provoked me to dream bigger about what I was going to do with my life. I'm a freelance consultant currently and work what they call the gig economy. And I like the flexibility of time, but it is a bit unstable. So it's not the best thing for my mental health, but I've been able to get through the pandemic. Grateful for that. And I'm in a good season of life. Apparently, my self care habits and routines are working pretty well. And my friend and I agreed to take a leap of faith to encourage Christian Asian mental health. And what I'm going to share with you is our blueprint and our plan in nearly real time as we are launching this and preparing as we speak. And you're free to copy and adapt our strategies and tactics. Consider this like open source software. We believe in the words of Jesus in Matthew 10, verse 8, freely you have received, freely give. And you're part of the summit. You know how big of a task this is to help the church not only open up to talking about mental health, but actually recognizing and realizing that we are in the most strategic place to really serve this most obvious of felt needs. The statistics tell us 20 to 25% of people have mental health struggles every year. And that's true inside the church and outside the church and in your community and in the conversations that church planters and church leaders often have is trying to figure out what the felt needs are that people have that churches can serve. Well, there's no greater felt need than mental health. So before I explain how our new initiative would work, here's why we are focusing on Christian Asian mental health. This is truly the evidence that demands a response. First, Asian American young adults from ages 15 to 24 are the only racial group with suicide as their leading cause of death. Second, Asian Americans are 50% less likely than any other racial group to seek mental health services. Again, a lot of that stems from the shame-based culture that we've all been raised up in. 54% of practicing Christians say they have at least one relational or emotional mental health issue that impacts their relationships. That's more than half. This is according to Barna. And lastly, individuals who are struggling with mental health are most likely to go to a clergy member, that's a pastor, that's a church leader, before they would go to a mental health provider or physician. So churches, pastors, church leaders, you're often the first responder, the first opportunity to help someone who is struggling with mental health. And this summit is here to equip you and to connect you with resources. And I want to share with you another approach. So now it's the year 2022. A lot has happened. The pandemic has exacerbated the mental health crisis in so many ways with social isolation, the loss of life, the illnesses, and then now different parts of the world, different parts of the country still have new waves of coronavirus that are morphing and changing. And it's all the more intensified for Asian Americans because of increasing anti-Asian hate and racism. Over 11,000 anti-Asian hate crimes have been reported, and many more are probably happening that have not been reported. Now, what's also hard for Asian Americans to get professional mental health care is lack of accessibility, lack of affordability, and lack of availability. Asian Americans and Asian cultures have perpetuated stigma and shame that alienates those who desperately are in need. And there's not enough race-conscious, culturally informed therapists and psychiatrists that can really speak to the situation and the life experiences of Asian Americans, which are very much a part of how we get well mentally and emotionally. So here's the thing. Healthcare providers and researchers are doing as much as they can, but it's not enough to serve the needs. And not everyone needs that level of professional care. Sometimes we just need it for a season. Plus, professional care is only available maybe once a week or less. There are many things that the local church can do to provide support and care. And this is the opportunity before us. Mental health isn't an issue just for those who have a diagnosable illness that's in the so-called DSM-5 manual. It affects all of us at different times in different ways. So whether it's stress, anxiety, worry, sadness, burnout, grief, emotional outbursts, feeling overwhelmed, cognitive fatigue, and so much more, relational tensions, you name it, all of those affect our mental health. So part of what we want to do is normalize this conversation. It's not just a mental illness that's got a diagnosis, but it's taking care of how our thinking and our feelings affect our spirituality too. So to summarize, here's the three main reasons that we're launching this initiative called Christian Asian Mental Health. Number one, it's more effective for greater impact. Like this summit and many other Christian ministries that are beginning to address the church and mental health. And there's many good resources in the generic non-Christian world for mental health. There doesn't seem to be as many in the church world for a couple reasons. Nearly half of churches don't talk about mental health, and some even say that there's no need for psychology. All you need is prayer and Bible and the spiritual disciplines to get well. But those of us that understand people as people holistically with multifaceted dimensions, psychology is very much a part of our overall well-being. Mental health involves the family history with cultural background. And speaking words of hope and encouragement to Asian American Christians here is crucial. And we want to do it in an ongoing and continuing ways to stop the stigma and erase the shame. So that it will be easier for people to take that first step of recovery and treatment, because that first step is so difficult. So this is even before Asian Americans would realize there's counseling and there's psychiatrists available to get help professionally. There's that resistance to see the doctor, see. And so if we're able to do something that can lower that stigma and to normalize it, that's what we want to be a part of with our initiative. Second, it's strategic. Churches are the only place that gathers Asian Americans and Asians every single week. Do you know what that can do? That can shape culture, that can change minds, that can change hearts, and that can help people to realize that there's hope for those who struggle, that they don't need to hide. The church can be a safe place. It needs to be a safer place. Christian author and leader, Pastor Ed Stetzer, has rightly noted that sermons stop stigma, and we would add, stories erase shame. So sermons stop stigma and stories erase shame. And we believe that churches and pastors can make a huge difference in helping people to get to that first step, to receiving help and healing and hope for whatever situation they're in, mentally and emotionally. And then third, there's this huge missing gap, this huge hole, because Christian Asian mental health is practically uncharted territory, uncharted space. One survey found that over 50% of Christians and churches don't believe mental illness exists. I mentioned that earlier. It just takes prayer and faith. Well, that's not really the reality as we understand it. And you already know how challenging it is to address mental health in churches. Overall statistics, 50%. Well, it's exponentially more difficult in the shame-based culture of Asian churches. So that's the context for why we're doing what we're doing. Here's the plan. So our dream and vision for Christian Asian mental health is to advance compassion and care for every person, especially Christian Asians, and to help Asian churches in becoming known as safe places for mental health and wellness. It's an ambitious goal. We're desiring to go national and, Lord willing, maybe international into the diaspora. But these are the three pieces of our strategy that I think will help us get there. Number one, we want to be about encouraging Christian Asian mental health. And we do that by weekly conversations through the Erasing Shame podcast, using social media, and leveraging the digital platforms and tools we have available. We want to normalize mental health by having normal people talk about mental health. Hey, it's great to have experts and psychologists and psychiatrists and people who are trained in dealing with mental health, but that's part of the barrier. That's part of the distance. Normal people don't want to many normal people don't want to be seen as a problem to be fixed by a doctor. They want to know that they're human. They want to know they're not alone, and they want to know that there's hope. I know those were three of the most important thoughts that got me through my challenges: that I'm not alone, that there is hope, and it's okay to get help. And I needed a lot of encouragement practically every day back in 2017 when I was going through that uh, 9 month of recovery from my personal crisis. Now, a little bit about the Erasing Shame podcast that was launched in 2018, about 4 years ago, by myself and my co host, Eunice Lee Hua. And during the first season, we actually live streamed conversations about honest and healthy living, emotionally, relationally, mentally, and personally. Our premise is really simple. Since shame festers in silence, according to shame researcher and expert bestselling author Brene Brown, the opposite of that is having honest conversations. And that would be the logical step to erasing shame. And throughout that first season, we realized shame is such a big topic. We never run out of conversation because it's so vast. It's far more than just a painful feeling. It affects our relationships, our mindset, our families, our communities, and practically every aspect of life if we allow it. And as I speak to you right now, we've surpassed 100 episodes of Erasing Shame podcast. We've gone on to have recorded 5 seasons and 2 special series. And now into season 6, we've refined our focus to encourage Christian Asian mental health. Rather than just talking about shame broadly and widely, we're focusing on Christian Asian mental health. Number 2, educating about mental health and resources. We want to do that in person for that personal touch, and we want to do that online through live streams and webinars for that synchronous interactive connection and conversation. So the first piece was encouraging. So we want to do that widely and publicly. Educating, we want to do that in a focused, interactive way. And then thirdly, we want to empower churches to host support groups and practical congregational care. And this is the part where churches have a vital role to play in supporting people's mental health. It's a complement, not a replacement for mental health care. The professionals do what the professionals do great, and the churches have a unique, a distinct, a very valuable opportunity to serve people, supporting them in their mental health journey, providing something that medicine and therapists cannot provide, which is the community of belonging and the spiritual resources of being connected with a God who is powerful, a God who can heal, a God who is with us every step of the way. And so our posture at Christian Asian Mental Health is to be a network of networks, and we want to collaborate well with partners, those who are like-minded and those who want to serve people, especially those that are influenced or have a connection with Asian Americans. But what we're doing, and the reason I'm sharing the plan and the blueprint with you, it's applicable in whatever circle or context or demographic you're working with. We know there's a few good things already happening out there. We want to shine a spotlight on their efforts, and we want to say, hey, we're not alone as Asian and Asian American churches in really taking some bold steps of faith to provide mental health support and wellness for Asian Americans throughout the country. But we're going to start here in Southern California because that's where nearly 40% of Asian Americans live. And we want to work well with others because we don't want to duplicate effort. And we realize we can do so much more together than, and we need to because the challenge is so big. And so it's a great opportunity for churches to not only serve their congregation, it's also a great opportunity for churches to serve their community with faith, hope, and love in a very practical and tangible and urgent felt need. We'd love to hear from you and learn together and journey together as we resolve the mental health crisis together in our generation. So please connect with me at DJ Chuang, my website, djchuang.com, or on social media. I'm DJ Chuang everywhere: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And probably easier to access would be our Erasing Shame podcast at erasingshame.com. May God do more than you can ask or imagine in you and through you in the weeks and months ahead. God bless you.